45. Oh man, it's time to fill them again. This year overall has been much cooler. So cool, in fact, that the garden is kind of having a hard time getting going. But we're starting to get into that really dry heat. Everything's starting to turn brown. We're kind of losing all those greens. You kind of look up at the hillsides and they don't look green anymore. They look brown. Now that we're well on our way with the house, you know, thoughts about wildfire are starting to enter my head and become a concern of ours for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, we've worked our butts off to build our house and we don't want to lose it. We do have insurance on our structure, but you know what? I think that that's just kind of like a last resort. Does anybody really want their house to burn down? I don't think so. We'd really rather that not happen, but if it does happen, hopefully we'll have, you know, the coverage will take care of us if this actually were to transpire. So I thought I'd talk just a little bit today about some of the things that we've done and things that we need to do to be more prepared to deal with this if it becomes a reality. Normally, I would say that we're probably at the lowest risk of wildfire because our property is surrounded by private property and it's a bunch of timber, and timber is valuable. And so everybody wants to protect it. So if a fire were to start on anyone's property around us, every conceivable effort would be made to extinguish that fire. Unlike public land where fire is managed, it's a necessary part of the forest and they're really trying to just protect structures and things, but they want the forest to burn controllably. That said, we're surrounded by roadways, and believe it or not, I believe a few days, I don't remember exactly how much, but a few days before Alyssa and I arrived on our property for the very first time, someone threw a cigarette out the window right down the road from our property and lit the road on fire. And the fire department thankfully came and put it out. And we weren't here for that, but that very easily and quickly could have spread. We could have already lost all of our trees and everything to fire. Our first year, we were basically sitting ducks, but by the second year, we had built this hot tub. It's not much, but we had thought forward to using it for fire protection. Of course, we have our small cabin and the RV garage, but there's 375 gallons of water in here with a hose fitting. Gravity fed, it's not going to do much, but a little tiny pump could give us enough pressure to soak our little cabin and hopefully protect what little we have. We never needed it, but this was the largest amount of water that we had on our property for the first year. It took us quite a long time, but if you see this kind of sandy scar going up the side of the hill here, we built a gravity fed water system that has two 1,300 gallon cisterns that are buried at the top of our hill, and that made a massive change. 10 times more water on our property for drinking and using, but let's be honest, we had to think about fire when we were designing that system because we didn't have any other water source here to help us. If you haven't seen those videos, jump back. We talk about that stuff in quite a bit of detail, the thinking behind the system design, the materials, and how multi-dimensional that system was. We actually found a book called Water Storage by Art Ludwig. We'll link to that book here. If you're gonna build kind of an independent, primitive water system, it's a fantastic book because it really goes through all the different things that you would need to use water for and how to think through those problems for your scenario. I credit that book with giving us the forethought to think ahead to fire. And then finally, we got a free pass. So this last winter, we were able to drill a well finally, and we actually have water on our property. We found water fairly shallow, and this is how now we're actually filling our cisterns. Prior to now, we were hauling water in a small IBC tote from a community water source, 275 gallons at a time. It was really everything we could do to keep up with the garden and the house. Fire would have been like a last resort. We have about 12 gallons per minute is the refresh rate on the well. And there's somewhere around 300 gallons of water that's actually static sitting in the wellhead at any given time. I kind of feel silly because we've had no water here for so long and we've been on conservation, conservation, conservation. So much so that in the RV that we lived in for 3.5 years, you turn the water on, you get wet, you turn the water off, you lather, you turn the water on, you rinse off, right? I mean, when we were carrying the water. So now that we have this fairly robust water source, I think has to factor into our strategy for dealing with fire. I'm gonna say that the chances of us having a wildfire low, the chances of us having a human-caused fire, pretty stinking high. One problem with our cisterns is that they're extremely far away and we don't have a reliable way to know how much water we have. So this spring we actually did a comparison between 5 different cistern or tank monitors, and we settled on this guy. It's been working fantastic. It's a wireless system that has a sensor in the cisterns, and it's self-calibrating, so it knows roughly the volume. It doesn't know how many gallons are in there, it just knows percentage, right? And so we can see that we're obviously at 50%. Since I know the size of the cisterns, I know that's about 1,300 gallons or so of usable water. We have kind of a system. We try to fill the cisterns when they get to about 50%, so that we're never more than 50% low. This is the history, and here's the 50% mark. We rarely get below 50%. This happens to work really well because the capacity of the water softener that we're using per region, where it has to restore the media that removes the iron and the calcium and stuff from the water from the well, it just so happens that that's about half of our cisterns. If we run this through a full regen cycle, it'll get us up to full. We can regen the unit and then it's basically ready to go again. If we have to, if we let the cisterns go below 50%, we could run this through 2 successive cycles, but that's almost a full day of pumping, regenning, pumping, and then regenning. So we try to keep it to 50%. The other reason that we want to keep the cisterns full is fire. This is the schematic for our gravity-fed water system. We have basically a master cistern and a slave cistern, and then we actually have a 2-inch main line coming down. If you haven't seen the videos where we try to pull that 2-inch through a conduit.
1, 2, 3. No, nothing.
Give it a watch. It's probably one of the darkest moments on our property, but we survived, we lived to tell about it. So now we have a 2-inch main coming down, and that 2-inch main actually terminates here into a 2-inch hydrant. That hydrant was quite a chore to find, but I would say, and we're going to find out today, that it was a worthwhile endeavor and an investment. One of the points that Art makes in his book is the importance of having the ability to flush or clean out your tanks so that sediment or things that fall in the tank or whatever can be removed. And that's actually the purpose of this hydrant. It's called a blow-off hydrant. And if you look carefully, you'll actually start to see these around. They put them on municipal water systems as a place for them to flush. It's not a fire hydrant by definition. They actually tend to use them just to purge the system of things like chlorine concentrations or fluoride, etc. So as we designed the system, we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to flush the cisterns from sediment. And what better way to do that and kill 2 birds with 1 stone than put in a blow-off hydrant? This hydrant serves as a fantastic fire hydrant. Part of what makes this hydrant unique is that it's actually a frost-free device. If you look back at the videos where we install this thing, it's like 5 or 6 feet tall and it weighs almost 100 pounds. This thing is a brute of cast iron. And because of that, the valve is actually well below the dirt, but we're able to turn the valve on and off from here. It has a very smooth moving gate valve. It's really similar to the way a frost-free hydrant works. When you turn this lever, you don't actually open a valve here. The valve is clear at the bottom, and this lever actuates that, which gives you the ability to have a frost-free hydrant. And this is a frost-free blow-off hydrant. So this valve here is a very slow-moving valve because we wouldn't want to shut this off very quickly. We would get what's called a water hammer, and there's a good chance that probably the poly might burst from the sheer stopping force of halting this amount of water that's moving extremely fast. When we designed this, we actually put the hydrant at the lowest possible point in the system so that any sediment that gets in the system will actually collect at the base of this hydrant. So we want to flush this periodically to remove any of that sediment. Oh yeah. Well, there wasn't much. Pretty clean. That looks like it's probably plenty. At a local Fireman ranch store, we're able to locate this woven poly hose. It's not a canvas fire hose, but for this application, it'll do the job fine. And then we added these banjo quick fittings to it so that we can basically attach it to the hydrant. And then we purchased a proper fire nozzle. And again, this opens and closes very slowly so that you don't end up with a water hammer effect. And then it also is on a banjo fitting and can be quickly installed to the hose. Hopefully Alyssa will be kind enough to put the clip in this video where we set this whole thing up and test it. And she let me hose her down. Come on, let's be. It was good fun, and nobody got injured in the process.
No more.
But we made sure that everything worked properly. But that was all before this existed. And I think the question I have is this hydrant, hose, nozzle, is this stuff sufficient to do what we want to do now? Or do we need to make some upgrades and kind of think about protecting the structure? I can tell you right now, this hose is pretty short. Well, it looks like we've got a few small leaks here. I think that's just a function of these fittings not being Teflon taped or whatever. Yeah, the whole thing just kind of looks like it needs a little bit of love, but I think if we had to, it would turn on. So a question I've had since we built this house is, because it's gravity fed, and we have about 70 feet of vertical drop in the system, but the house is over 40 feet tall, is there enough pressure in the system that if we needed to, could we wet the entire roof or the peak of the roof? Looks to me like the answer is no, there's not enough pressure. We're only making it about 20, maybe 25 feet vertically, so there's no way we're going to be able to douse the entire roof with this fire hose, at least not this situation. It just goes to show how much all the connections and fittings and everything in a water system diminish the flow rate and have a kind of a turbulent effect on everything. So at 25 feet, I would say this hose is probably good for wetting around the house, but when it comes to getting the roof wet or even the upper part of the peak of the roof, we're gonna have to have something different. Uh-oh. Apparently that cannot be trusted. There we go. So I just hooked a garden hose to the well. Even though we're using the well to fill the cisterns, the well is capable of 12 gallons per minute. The pump, I think, is actually capable of 10, something like that. And the cisterns are only capable of flowing 6 through the water softener. So in theory, hypothetically, there's 4 gallons a minute left at 100 pounds of pressure, which is plenty to run a regular garden hose. I mean, this is kind of like maximizing the well. I'm kind of thinking forward to like some really concocted scenario where we start filling the cisterns immediately. We run the fire hose, but we're filling the cisterns, which keeps the fire hose going. But then we hook a garden hose to the well because there's more water available than we can put in the cisterns. Yeah, that's getting really out there, guys. I think we're looking for more of a simple 1, 2, 3 strategy. But let's see if this guy has enough pressure, which it should, at 100 PSI or somewhere in that region, to get all the way up to the peak of the roof. Well, I would say we're not quite to the peak, but we're probably pretty close. We're probably going about 35 feet or so. And of course, this is not a very good nozzle. It's just something I had laying around. So I think today what we should add to our toolbox is going to be a proper nozzle. One that doesn't have just a squeezy handle like this, but you actually turn it on. I feel like those get much higher flow rates. It's not having to go around this bend, which is gonna cause a reduction in flow, right? So the straight nozzles that you actually just twist open, they're more like a fire nozzle than anything. They're straight out, and those tend to yield the best volume. Plus, you're not gonna wanna hold this handle for a long time, and the other kind you can just open. You know, there's a Y on the wellhead, so it's possible that if we removed that Y, that we may be able to get even better flow, or we could trade it out for a high flow Y, which I brought out. A high flow Y may actually yield even better flow. Well, why wouldn't it? Let's try something that's kind of fringy. Let's turn the cisterns off. That way we have full flow here. The problem is there's no real pressure relief on the well system. There's a weeping hole, but that's it. So what we need to do is make sure that this thing is basically running full blast the entire time. That way the pump is not having to work extremely hard because there's not enough flow. All right, so let's go 100%. So let's go wide open on this guy and let's slowly turn off. Oh yeah, now we're getting some pressure. So I actually wonder if that's enough to get all the way to the peak of the roof. I would say the answer on that is probably yes, minus the low quality of this nozzle, but we're pushing probably 100 pounds of pressure right there. I'd say we're getting pretty close. It's almost pressure washer status. All right, let's give the cisterns back. So yeah, there's a noticeable decrease in pressure when I turn the cisterns off. Watch this. That's with the cisterns off, cisterns on. I think this is why going through all this stuff today, no wildfire, nobody's threatening the house at the moment, is good, because what I want to do at the end of this is write down a plan and say, here's the threats, here's our resources, and then here's the plan of action. And I feel like that's something that's good to just have around, so that when things start to get chaotic, you're not like, oh, where's the hose, or where are the nozzles at, or who's running this nozzle, or where do I get water from, or how does it all work? So let's add to our shopping list today a nozzle for that hose. I think it's safe to say that that hose needs to be much longer. We're barely even getting halfway up the driveway up here, so I mean, you're just not going to get there. But if we added, you know, maybe 100 feet to that hose, we should easily be able to get behind the house over here and behind the house over here. I think having, you know, 100 feet of hose at the hydrant over here would be nice. This hose, I think, is only a 50-foot hose. The hydrant does happen to be in the middle of the house, but you're only going to get about halfway around that way or halfway around this way. Even moving up to a more durable hose, even though that's a poly fiber hose and you can drag it across the rocks, man, if that thing bursts open, well, there goes all your water. If you haven't seen that video, jump back and watch the video where that water main, we'll say it broke. It didn't really break, but let's pretend it broke. And you'll just see how much water comes out of a 2-inch line unrestricted. It's unreal, the amount of flow rate. Okay, so we've kind of tested the resources that we have. We've tested the fire hose from the cisterns, and we've tested the well with a garden hose. And what's interesting is you can actually get pretty decent pressure from the garden hose at the well while filling the cisterns. And I guess in the case of a true threatening wildfire, screw the water softener. We're probably going to hook the well straight to the cisterns and just keep that water flowing into the cisterns as fast as we can. Certainly this 2-inch hose is going to outrun it, but you know, what if it gives you 20% more, you know, flow rate? And then you can also be running a garden hose at the same time doing work. So the next question that I have is capacity. We talked about the cisterns if they're completely full. What's the odds of having a wildfire when your cisterns are completely full? Pretty rare, right? But one thing we need to understand is how much time or how much water do we have available before we run out. You're not going to be standing out here manning the fire hose and watching the cistern monitor inside, right? So something we can do is check the flow rate and try to get some rough idea. If I run in and I look at the cistern monitor, do a quick calculation, I can estimate the amount of gallons in the cisterns, and I can run a gallons per minute flow rate on this, and that'll give me an idea of how many minutes I have of water before we're dry. So let's use this handy bucket, and we'll figure out how long it takes us to fill this bucket to 5 gallons. So what we need to do is find kind of the ideal pressure or flow rate on this hose. So let's say it's somewhere, let's say that's ideal right there. You're gonna blow the bucket over? Okay, I've come to the conclusion that this is not a one-man operation, so hopefully Alyssa will come out here and give me a hand. Okay, this is gonna get really ugly. Are you ready? Okay, so 14.82 seconds or so to 5 gallons. So that's about 20 gallons a minute. So if we go conservative with this number, I think 20 gallons a minute is being fairly conservative. I've run calculations online using, you know, pipe calculators, and the numbers are just, they vary. I think that's why at the end of the day you have to do like a real world test to determine flow rates. It's just, there's too many connections, every pipe's different, this hose, the nozzle, everything, right? 20 gallons a minute is a lot lower than I thought. I'll just say that. It's not a small amount of water, but I was thinking that we would get flow rates closer to 100 gallons a minute. I don't know. That's a lot of water. What do I know? So I guess if we use that kind of math, we can kind of figure out where our cisterns are at, and then we can figure out how much water we've got to play with. So a full set of cisterns at 20 gallons a minute would give us about 100 minutes. So we could go for an hour and a half with this hose. Are you serious? At full throttle? Wow, that's a lot of water. I guess 2,500 gallons is not a small amount of water. And so if we were to simultaneously be running the well into the cisterns, you know, we could extend our runtime by as much as, what, 40 minutes? So half of that again? Wow. So we could go for 2 hours squirting this place down before we're just completely out of water. That's not too shabby with the fire hose. Of course, we don't love the idea of using all of our drinking and showering water, but we'll do what we have to in the case of a fire, right? So this is beautiful water, and that's really where the well becomes exciting. I think there's a test that can be done on wells that kind of determines the drawdown, which is like how fast can you just draw the water off of a well before it starts to lose head. We didn't do all those tests. They gave us a flow rate, a refresh rate, and a static amount. The good news is we've pumped to our cisterns many times, which means we've drawn as much as 2,500 gallons. If you remember the video where we were like, oh, we're actually out of water. We filled the cisterns completely that day, which means we drew 2,500 gallons off of the well, and to our knowledge, we still had water left. Of course, this is summertime, so water tables in theory are probably dropping. Anyway, so the well is kind of an unknown as far as capacity goes, especially if we're drawing into the cisterns and trying to fight fire with it at the same time. I am curious, what the flow rate is on one of these nozzles. So let's do that test, because if that well is capable of, say, 12 or 10 gallons a minute, we're filling the cisterns at, say, 6 gallons a minute. That means in hypothetical land, there's 4 gallons a minute flow rate at 100 PSI that our well pump is capable of. So if we could hook up more than one garden hose at a time and really maximize the well, wouldn't that be awesome? About there. So 46 seconds. So we're getting somewhere around between 6 and 7 gallons a minute. So if the well's capable of 12 gallons a minute and we're putting 6 into the cisterns, then we really only will be able to run one hose at a time. I guess that makes sense. So we've got 20 gallons a minute approximately of flow from the fire hose, and that's variable, so maybe we should be conservative and say it's 25 gallons a minute, which would give us 100 minutes of flow. And then we're getting 6 to 7 gallons a minute or so out of a garden hose. I guess we could deduce that if we didn't want to fill the cisterns, we could run 2 garden hoses at approximately 6 gallons a minute, 100 pounds per pressure. And the last one on the list was the hot tub. And there's part of me that's like, I don't really care. We might not need it, but you know what? We might need it. So maybe we should hook that up. I suppose I probably need to say, because someone out there probably will misunderstand, the rusty water is actually from the pump, not from the hot tub. The pump is a cast iron pump, and if you let it sit over time with no water in it, it will rust on the inside. And so the first little bit of water that goes through that pump is rusty. There's 5. So that gave us 5 gallons in about 35 seconds. So that's closer to 9 gallons a minute. And that's 375 gallons. So maybe 35 minutes or so is about how much water before we run out. And that's if we run it all the way to the bottom. 35 minutes of water in the hot tub. Yeah, could you lay down, please? Thanks. Okay. Thank you for assisting. Assistant. Thank you for the assistance. You're not very good at assisting. You are good at distracting. Yeah, you're not an assistant, you're a distractant. Or you want to go outside distractant? Huh? You want to be an outside distractant? Oh, you just want to be a distractant. Got it. All right, so this is all the data that we collected so far. We know the capacity of the cisterns, the well, the hot tub. We know the flow rate and approximately how far the water will go. It's a pretty simple calculation. If we get 25 gallons per minute, that's 1/100th of the capacity of the cistern. Therefore, 1% equals 1 minute of water. So those are the primary resources I think that we can count on the property. We do have a couple of mechanical fire extinguishers that we could use, but man, those aren't going to go far. Those are really for a spot fire, like right there on the ground type of thing, but I guess anything in a fire will help. So I'll probably add the fire extinguishers to that plan just so we don't forget that we have them. And I guess it's not meant as disrespect at all, more as a reality of living in the country. A lot of our fire departments are volunteer, and so people are working, and it takes a while. It takes a while for everybody to get where they're supposed to go. And so we do have a fire department. We're going to put them at the bottom of the list, and that's just because they're there. We know they will come. We know they'll help out. But A, we're probably not going to be the only one if it's a wildfire. And 2, it could be a while. So I'd rather start with what can we do, and then, you know, start relying on other people after that. So I guess now in my mind, I want to think about what are some proactive or preventative things that we could do to make sure that we don't have this scenario, this doomsday type scenario, and we're kind of prepared for the reality that a fire could start. I feel like because we have the well, for the first time on the property, we actually have water. Before, water has been such a scarce resource that the thought of watering anything just for fire purposes, we're like, you know what, we'll hedge our bets that we don't have a fire. That's what we'll do. And we got through it and we didn't. But now we have water, and we don't know how much water's in the well, but our well driller said if you run that well dry, everybody in this valley has a problem. So I guess that's comforting. So I think what we can do is just start kind of watering around the property and adding back some of the lushness, you know, up against the house and stuff. We don't have a lot of grass or anything that's really grown up densely around the house. We do have some weeds. We pull a lot of those weeds by hand in the spring because we're trying to actually eliminate them. Some of them are noxious weeds and such, and so we physically pull them out of the ground. We're not super keen on using herbicides and chemicals. One, we don't want it in the garden, and we just don't want that stuff around here. Some of the stuff is persistent in the soil, and no, just don't want to do it. So we could weed whack or trim all that stuff. I don't feel like it's a major problem. I think maybe a better solution would be to water it all and get it all to be green, and that way it's actually moisture around the house. So I think we should consider doing that, especially since we've got the well. It's got lots of flow rate. We're not utilizing it every single day for domestic use because we're filling the cisterns right now about once a week. So I think considering how to add some water in front of the driveway, beside the house, maybe behind the house, and then next to it here around the hot tub deck, that might help mitigate some of the dryness that exists. So any fire that were to get close to the house would just be kind of stifled right there. I hate buying things when we already have so many just like little trinkets laying around. I just looked through my plumbing box really quick and found this kind of a cute little sprinkler. But a sprinkler is a sprinkler, right? I think we actually have another sprinkler in storage, so I might stop there today too and grab whatever we have in storage. And then while I'm at the store today getting nozzles, I might just grab a sprinkler if I feel like we need one. And I think that will kind of round out the plan. Well, sprinklers are working good. I realize it's going to cause the vegetation to grow, but at this point we just feel like Mother Nature is going to win. We're not to the landscaping phase yet. We just rather have things to be lush and green than have them dry and combustible. I got a couple of different nozzles at the hardware store. I was pretty excited that they actually had a Fireman's nozzle. Funny, I wish I had something like this for the fire hose, but it's probably good that we don't because this is too quick of an action. You would definitely cause a water hammer if you could open and close that too fast. I wanted to test these though because some of these look like they would actually restrict the flow. This is what I actually had in mind because it's so straight and the tip inside is so small. It's very easy when you open this thing full throttle to get a very straight stream. And I don't know if you've used these before, but it goes a long ways if you've got decent pressure. So what I thought we might do is test these. That way we can kind of make notes in our plan. I also grabbed a dedicated 100-foot 3/4 inch hose. My thinking is to have this nozzle, whatever it is, permanently attached to this hose and have it readily accessible. That way it can be brought out and immediately hooked to the hydrant. Let's try the Fireman's nozzle first. Oh wow. Not quite gonna make it on that one. All right, to be fair, what we need to do is we need to turn this all the way on. So let's turn this on and let's turn the sprinklers off. There we go. Now we're talking. Man, that's getting pretty high. That's probably close to the same 40 feet that we were getting out of that other nozzle. And let's try this other nozzle, and I'm assuming that's full open. Here, maybe that's full open. Oh wow, that's not even close. That's probably 25 maybe. 25, maybe 30 feet, maybe. There's definitely more flow here. I'm not saying more flow than the Fireman's nozzle, but then that handheld one that we were using earlier. So there's more water, but we're not getting the range that we're after, at least not on this one. All right, let's go for this brass $10 nozzle. All right, so this one, oh yeah, I'd say that's probably the highest so far, but I still don't think it's rooftop high. Let's go over here. Nope, we're only getting about 5 to 6 feet onto the roof. So that tells you we're definitely going almost 40 feet. I think the pressure's there, but just the shape of the nozzle is not letting that go full distance. So that's a no. So I think this is the winner. It definitely shoots the farthest, and it has good flow too. I think one thing I don't like is how quickly you can shut it off. That's both good and bad. But as far as the Fireman's nozzle goes, I think this is a winner for sure. So I think we'll put that in our toolkit. Well, it turns out trying to shoot water 50 feet vertically is pretty tough to do. I don't know what pressure we're actually running at the well. You have to remember that that water in the well is coming from 70, 80 feet below the ground. So it's having to push 80 feet of head pressure to get up to the surface. And then we're asking it to push it another 50 feet vertically, which would require something like 30 pounds of pressure or something like that, 35. I think we made progress. I think we have a good nozzle. I just think that if we needed to wet the top of the roof for some reason, which being metal, it's probably not that big of a deal, but getting the house wet, you know, might be something we had to do. And we're gonna need every bit of pressure from that wellhead to do it. So we wouldn't be able to fill the cisterns at the same time. You know, that's everything that well's got. Although, you know, we have this Y on there, and I think that's creating a restriction. So, you know what? Maybe we should try it. Maybe we should just try it without the Y and see what that does. That's not a bad idea. All right, you ready? Okay. Okay, try not to smile while you're doing that.
Too late.
Too late. At this point, I would say yes, but not a ton. So maybe 2 feet is all the difference that made. So I think that kind of concludes my testing. Brings me right back to using that red nozzle and then putting that on our dedicated fire hose. I think that's a win. I had kind of a funny aha while we were out shopping, and that is that I don't know that I opened this hydrant valve all the way. I know I opened it enough to get some good flow, but there's something that tells me maybe I didn't open it fully and that we should probably retest this. Whew, now she's full open. That's a lot of pressure. Ooh, that's plump or firm. I would say yes. In fact, I almost think this goes higher than the well, if that's possible. So we're going 40 feet for sure, but I think it's probably a good idea with that full open to recheck the flow rate. I guess it's probably not going to change a whole lot. Oh my God. Apparently I didn't open it. Look at that. Holy cow, I'm spraying the deck right now. That's like probably over 50 feet. So apparently I just need to open it further. And I'm actually well onto the deck from here, which means we're solidly at 50 plus feet. Whew, that was kind of exciting. My adrenaline's kind of pumping a little bit now. Can't lie. So I think it's a good idea to shoot a new flow rate check, because I have a hunch that that's way more than 20 gallons a minute. How am I supposed to get this in the bucket? Ah! Did you start the timer? Okay, when? I think that's 5 gallons. It's probably closer to 6.
We shaved 5 minutes off our best, our personal best.
Wow, okay, so yeah, that's like twice as much flow. So let's say it was 9 seconds for 5 gallons. Looks like we're probably closer to in the mid 30 gallons per minute range. So that changes our calculations on the cisterns for sure. I think my intuition was right that I didn't have that valve full open. That's a ridiculous amount of water. 30, let's call it 35 gallons per minute, because a second's a big difference in the time on that thing. And the water in that bucket's swirling so dang much that who knows when 5 gallons actually happened. Second of all, that's a lot of distance. I think that's actually gonna go farther than the hose from the well. And here I thought that the well would produce more distance because it's at a higher pressure. But man, when you get a column of water 2 inches that's moving down a hill, it really gets to honking. So we need to change our calculations on the cisterns, and A, and B, that makes me feel really good, because boy, you could get the deck wet or the house wet. Well, you can get anything wet in a hurry. And then I guess we probably ought to just do a flow check on that red thing really quick, because we didn't do that, and see if it's any different than that squeezy nozzle we had. So there's the red nozzle, and we're coming up a solid 15 or even 20 feet short of what the 2-inch fire nozzle would do. So that's good to know. 5 gallons. So 34 seconds is how long it took to get 5 gallons. It's kind of interesting. I calculated out the garden hose from the well, and we're actually getting closer to this flow rate, 8 to 9 gallons per minute. And that kind of coincides with what we were getting from the hot tub. And I'm wondering if that's a function of removing that Y. So we were getting 6 to 7 gallons per minute, but you know what? We're also using a different nozzle. So I can't tell you if it's the nozzle, the Y, or all the above. But the good news is we know how to get 8 to 9 gallons per minute out of the well, 8 to 9 out of the hot tub, and we just increased the flow from the fire hose by 1/3. So we were at 25, and now we're pushing around 34 gallons per minute, somewhere in there. And that, for quick math, means that for every 4% that we have at the cistern monitor, we only have about 3 minutes of water, which is quite a bit less. And I think if you really started to push the nozzle to more the flood mode, that rate's gonna go even higher. I would definitely say that today was a good learning experience. I expected to find some problems or some flaws in our plan, and we definitely did. But I was hoping to kind of come out of this with some good information, and ultimately to be able to write all this stuff down and then go over it with Alyssa, and also with anybody that might be staying at our house, you know, if we're out of town or something. That way everybody's crystal clear where stuff is, how it all works, and what they can expect from it. I didn't find a longer fire hose, so unfortunately I'm probably gonna have to go to the internet for that. So I've got to get that on order and then make sure it's all here, fitted up, and ready to go. Otherwise, I feel like the cisterns and the 2-inch line really proved themselves today once I kind of got the settings figured out. And how to document that so somebody could figure it out if it wasn't me, I'm not really sure, but I'll probably come up with a way, either mark the nozzle or just make good notes about if it's acting like this, it's not there. If it's acting like this, it's there. I don't know. Point it at the fire and turn it on. There you go. And go until it goes as far as it can go. And if I'm honest, I had a little bit of fun. I'm a little bit wet. Our driveway's a mess, and we've also wasted a ton of water today, so that's not a bad day. So I think the answer to my question, can our house survive a wildfire? I would say yes. But not without some planning, not without some strategy and some preventative, stuff. So hopefully we don't ever experience that. And I suppose if we ever do, we'll try to get it on camera.